Hello, disruptors, and welcome back to another episode of Mindset Mastery Moments. Today, we are diving into an extraordinary topic that I was absolutely excited about. You know, on Mindset Mastery Moments, where we think boldly, speak wisely, and we do courageously and become who we were created to be. Today's conversation is about shifting our lens on leadership, influence, and emotional intelligence and emotional resilience as well. We're diving into what it means to lead with both compassion and conviction. And joining us today is someone who has lived this work from the inside through war zones, courtroom battles, corporate boardrooms, and soulful self-reflection. She is a TEDx speaker who's talked about emotional intelligence and psychological mastery, cracked open the truth about reactive leadership, and taught us how it really means to respond and not react. She's also the author of a transformative new book that's called Stoic Empathy, the roadmap to life of influence, self-leadership, and integrity. This book isn't just a read, it is a recalibration, a guide for anyone who wants to stop people-pleasing, start setting boundaries, and lead with both heart and logic. She's also here to teach us how to access what she calls resilient self-leadership. And you all know we love to talk about first leading yourself here on Mindset Mastery Moments, and the ability also to stay rooted in who you are while still showing up with empathy for others. Let me introduce to you today our remarkable guest, Miss Shermin Kruse, international attorney, TEDx curator and speaker, law professor, business strategist, master negotiator. Oh, she is on those heels kicking butt. She's advised on everything from international humanitarian law to nine-figure corporate deals, and she's deeply committed to helping leaders unlock their highest potential through value-based leadership. Shermin, it is such an absolute pleasure to have you today. Welcome to Mindset Mastery Moments. Can you share with us who you are, what you do, and why you do it?
Dr. Whyte, thank you so much for inviting me on. If I may call you Alisa, I don't want to take away from your accomplishments. I'm always very sensitive to that.
No, I'm not. I'm good.
Thank you for the privilege of being here and for joining your listeners or viewers, as the case might be, for this really terrific conversation. I really look forward to it. Who am I? Well, isn't that the eternal question that we ask ourselves 5 million times in life? I'd like to think at my core, I am someone whose inherent curiosity about human nature fuels their spirit and their soul. But, you know, as they say, in life, we wear many hats and play many roles. And one of the challenges of my life has been finding my authentic centricity among those many roles and bringing myself into every situation, regardless of what it is, who it's with, where it is, when it is, etc. And one of the reasons that's been such a challenge for me is that I grew up, and we'll talk about, I'm sure you'll ask my childhood in a few minutes, but I grew up quickly learning adaptation. Adaptation was not an issue to me. Walking into a room, immediately reading it, knowing what needed to be said and done, not to conform, but to win, was just something that was easy for me, that I learned as a kid growing up. What was difficult for me was finding myself within that process. And so what I've done is, throughout the last several decades of my life, is tackle the combination of those two things, break them down, and do my best to put together a philosophy on how to approach it so that you can gain that power, you can gain that advantage in a particular room, but you can do it with the intentionality of being yourself, which is not easy, not for me either.
Right. Oh, I love that. So many of us, even as we step in leadership roles or just traditional gender roles, we tend to, the more we conform to being the person that's needed to play those roles, we just lose ourselves. So here's the thing. You have created a philosophy, as you said, Stoic Empathy. So
Yes.
powerful and unexpected, even. Tell us what inspired you to blend these two philosophies, and what does it mean to you at your core? And then what did you want the world to learn from you in that?
Well, honestly, when I really think about it, and I have thought about it a great deal, particularly as I was writing this book, I
Mm-hmm.
realized that this has been a core component of my strength and my struggle
Mm,
since really I was a child. I grew up in Iran, post-revolution during the war. And it was a very bloody war and a very bloody
mm,
time with
yes,
an incredible amount of oppression in the air,
yes.
combined with the tragedies of war, whether it's death or missile strikes or bread lines or energy shortages.
Mm,
And so that was my childhood. And what I saw observed for me and modeled for me by my parents, who are quite extraordinary people, my mother as well as my father, what I
mm,
saw modeled for me by them was what I'm now calling Stoic empathy. I just didn't know what it was then or what it was called. But
mm.
it was as though and by the way, I think all of you guys are going to be able to relate to this once I tell you some of the stories. It's as though their awareness, their empathic awareness of me, my sisters, and our
Mhm,
vulnerability is
mm.
precisely what resulted in their superhero esque capability to manage and regulate their own emotions in
Wow.
the midst of massive turmoil. I mean, how many times have you been leading a team or parenting your children, a group that relies on you, a group that is more vulnerable than you, a group
Yes.
that has less power than you in a particular dynamic? And you found your awareness of them to be exactly what centers you in that moment,
Mm,
right? I
mm,
mean,
yes.
how incredible then would it be to find that? Now, I don't care if you were, driving in a rainstorm with a migraine with your kids in the car,
Right.
or just found out you lost your biggest client and have to inform your team. Either way, you can't ignore the rainstorm. You can't pretend it doesn't exist,
Yes.
right? You can't
Right.
you can't lie to your team. The client's not there anymore. But what
You
you can
pretend.
do, yeah, exactly. But what you can do is you can present this information in a
Mhm.
manner that is controlled, composed, dignified, full of integrity. And even what you don't know then, you
Yes.
can say, I don't yet know this, but in a
Right.
way that projects confidence and sincerity and belief. And
Exactly.
that
Wow.
that protects the other people, right? That
Right.
protects the other people. It also protects you. You can't drive through the rainstorm if you really lose yourself amidst the migraine.
Yes. Right. You can't. You absolutely can't.
So, yeah, so it was really seeing this modeled this by my parents. And then as I grew older, I became an attorney and an advocate and a debater, and I studied philosophy and neuroscience. And for
Mm,
many, many years, I got really great at showing up in court and convincing people I didn't know to agree with
your arguments.
my
Yeah.
client.
Yeah.
And as I was doing that, I started to break that down. And then I started to go through imposter syndrome.
Mm,
All leaders go through this.
yes.
Is this really what I discovered is actually one of the reasons I have this imposter syndrome is I am being an imposter.
Oh, come
I,
on.
I am putting myself into a role that doesn't sit with me, not fully. There is
Mm,
an aspect of it that's performative.
yes.
And, that's the reality. That's the reality with sales. That's the reality with leadership. There's always going to be a performative aspect. But how do you embrace that lead role? How do you
Mm,
embrace the becoming of that character and bring yourself
mm,
into it so
yes.
that you leave it not feeling like an imposter, but
Mhm.
feeling like that was me? I did that.
Oh, yes. Been there.
Yes, and I'm 47, 48, almost 48. I turned 48 in a few weeks. So I'm pushing half a century, y'all. And I
Mm.
feel like I'm finally starting to get this.
And breathe and be yourself. Come on. I know what you're talking about, sister.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's been such a journey and it's been such a pleasure writing this book because it really enabled me to give time and energy not just to the philosophies, but also to the scientific grounding and underpinning of the philosophy so that I can break it down,
Exactly.
understand it better, right? And learn how to teach it.
I love it. And that's my favorite thing about when I'm reading a book or connecting with someone's message and their platform is when it is their journey. And they also add the science and they learned and studied it. It just comes alive very differently than just learning another great theory. And so in the book, you said that empathy is misunderstood and it can become a self sacrificial trap, which is what you kind of describe. That really struck a chord with me. Can you unpack a little bit more how Stoic empathy teaches us to draw boundaries without losing compassion? Because that's the big issue, right? We
Right.
want to come over as most composed, most and then also be most not to lose our leadership flair or grip or control. So we put a hodgepodge of what everyone expects, and that's where we kind of lose ourselves.
Yeah.
So you're saying that it is a self-sacrificial trap. That word got me because I have one that I call the Martha syndrome. So tell us, what does it teach us when it comes to putting up those boundaries, but still
Oh,
maintaining compassion?
here's here's what I'd love for you to imagine. I'd love for you to imagine that you are a trauma surgeon working in the emergency room.
Mm,
Someone is wheeled in. They have multiple bullet wounds throughout their body.
mm,
This person is a child. The
mm.
bullet points were inflicted by someone who's supposed to love them.
Gosh.
The situation is tragic, but
Yes.
you are the trauma surgeon. It is
Yes.
not your job to lose control over the tragedy that is before you,
Right.
bloodying your very, very hands, right?
Yes.
It is your job to save this child's life.
That's it.
That is your job. That is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to serve this child. Sometimes that child is yourself.
Mm.
Sometimes that child is your team, right? But sometimes, in order to serve ourselves, to serve our team, to maintain our power and control,
Mhm.
we must, yes, of course, maintain kindness and compassion. Imagine if
Yes.
the trauma surgeon just didn't care whether that kid lived or died. Doesn't
Right.
matter either way. I'm going out drinking with my buddies after the surgery. Can you imagine what kind of surgeon they would be, right? But
Right.
at the same time, they cannot allow the feelings that they have. And of course, there's some aspect. I mean, unless you're a true psychopath, or if you're a human being, you feel things. But
Yes.
you do have the ability through training and
Mhm.
through a particular type of understanding to
Mm.
modulate your emotional involvement or investment so that at a minimum, at the time you're performing the surgery,
That's right.
which can take hours,
Yes.
you are calm. You
Mhm.
never stop caring, but
No.
you are decisive, you are clear, and you are making decisions based on logic and wisdom and
Yes.
not the fact of the tragedy.
Right.
Very different scenario than if you're that child's auntie or
Come on.
mother,
Yes.
right? Very different type of empathy. But I want you to imagine both of these as being essential types and components of empathic awareness that
Mm.
depends on the situation. Listen, sometimes you walk a mile in the person's shoes because they are your spouse, they are your business partner, they
Yes.
are your longtime client, they are your daughter, they are, you have these incredibly meaningful long term relationships with them. But
Mhm.
other times, it's probably best if you don't walk in their shoes. What's better is if you sync your step with their steps. You
Mm.
smell what they smell, you see what they see, you hear what they hear, right? You say what they say, and you experience the world through their eyes in a manner that doesn't emotionally impact you the same way as if you were in the shoes, right?
Choose.
And so this
Ooh.
modulation, which is really one, the book breaks down emotional empathy and cognitive empathy as two different
Mhm.
types of empathy, but
Mhm.
describes it not as a dichotomy, but as a spectrum, right?
I love
Because
that.
your emotional investment is trickled in different amounts depending on the circumstances. And then
Right.
you adjust it, right? Depending on how people reveal themselves or how the circumstances change, or
Yes.
your own strength or your own power. And that adjustment, that modulation, that is why I teach Stoicism, because the Stoic tools of emotional self-regulation enable you to engage in that modulation. And what we do in the book is we take you through ancient Stoic practices and their
Mm,
parallels with mindfulness, Buddhism, ancient Japanese samurai warriors. I mean, these ancient philosophies, which
yes.
really are sort of modern cognitive behavioral therapy, right?
That's
It
all
are
applied. Yes.
yeah, yeah. They are all tools of assisting you in your modulation in particular situations.
Mhm.
And as you embrace them and practice them, like any practice, like yoga, like meditation, you become better. You really do.
Better.
And some people are naturally very good at this. Others, they default to not feeling enough, to
Yes.
distancing themselves too quickly, too soon in order to protect their own vulnerabilities.
Yes.
Other people, they default to going too far in the emotional space, right?
Right. Right.
They feel so deeply that sometimes they experience utter empathy collapse. I have a terrible
Mm.
story about this that I hate sharing because it makes me
Mhm.
sound like a monster. But we've all sort of been in these situations where we're like, I should be heartbroken, but I just can't right now.
Right.
And right? And
Right.
it's almost terrifying. And
Yes.
so I'm trying to learn how to still care
Mhm.
without having my heart break,
Come on.
but but still care,
Still
right? And
care.
so that yes, so I maintain my humanity. So I don't become an imposter. So I feel like myself, but I get through the day.
Right. Because it can flip both ways. You can become an over empathetic imposter, or I call it a dry bones imposter, where you're like, I call that fake stoicism, just because it's not you. You're faking that, oh, this doesn't faze me. I'm not moved by this. So you mentioned earlier, and it's like, okay, team, we just lost our biggest contract, and I don't have all the answers yet. This news just came in a few hours ago, but we're going to work it out. That is my honest truth. But because I would have mastered the fact that I understand that we might have budget cuts and this can affect a whole bunch of families, I have already thought about that and have allowed myself to process. But understand, this is not all within my control. There's so many more details. And tomorrow, that other client we've been working on can come through. So none of this I have to figure out right now. And I know that everything always works out. I think that's like my earlier journey. I still am in this path of being able to be stoic enough, but empathetic, and be true to myself without oversharing sometimes, because that would be my thing. I remember saying to staff horrible news when it comes to all the COVID stuff we were dealing with. I was leading a
Yeah.
bunch of education staff, and so I found myself very quickly having to not say, I did not want to share what I felt, because we would have these sessions where early in the morning before we did virtual teaching, I would listen to the staff and allow them to just say how they're feeling. I'm afraid, like, this is really getting horrible. My dad is in a hospital, whatever felt you could share. And we had a time frame. We had a time. You couldn't just go on and on. And then when it was my turn, I had to be selective of what I shared, because they're not my therapist, right? And I'm also their leader. It's like, okay, I want to show vulnerability, but I also have to show strength. And I remember that was a rocky point for me. And that was where I learned and now became in the practice of what you coined so well, of that there's a level of me. We call it be concerned, but not consumed. Have you heard that?
I have not heard that. That's beautiful. I love
Right.
it.
That was what I don't know who I got it from. Thank gracious. It's been years. But it made sense to me. I heard it so many times. Be concerned and not be consumed. And because I do so much of humanitarian work and support work, I realize that there are times I'm getting so confused, Shermin. And so what I love is in your TEDx talk when you said emotional intelligence is not just a soft skill, it is a survival skill. And so I felt that so deeply inside of me. I was reflecting of that journey, especially during when I was leading through COVID times, was when I had to grow the heck up. So, in a world where people are either reactive or emotionally shut down, really, there's so much, it's either one or the other. I'm not seeing, there are very few leaders I see with a balance. How does your framework help us build true emotional intelligence?
Yeah, so I think that here's the issue, at least the issue as I have faced it and as I've seen other people struggle with it.
Mm-hmm.
We want to present as vulnerable because we read the books that tell us that's the way to be. We want to present as strong because we read the books that tell us to be,
Yeah.
right? And the reality is, at the end of the day, we actually have to be vulnerable and
Mm-hmm.
be strong. And
Mm.
once we internalize that, it's no longer role play. It's just a matter of modulating your language so that you communicate it effectively, right? Which is still
Wow.
a skill, by
Yes.
the way.
Yes.
It is still a skill, but it is not presenting yourself in any particular type of manner. It is actually being
Who you
that
become.
thing. Yes.
Yes.
And so what I talk about doing is, I don't know if you've ever been involved in athletics. I have not. I'm the world's biggest klutz. I did do a lot of hand-to-hand combat, and so I always come back to hand-to-hand combat.
I did it
But
very young in my earlier teens.
oh
And
my
now
gosh, yeah, I
all I
could
do
not
is
hit a
I lift
ball with a
weights and I
bat to save my
exercise.
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
But I'll
did
tell
some
you,
stuff.
when you talk to athletes, they
Uh-huh.
will tell you that at a certain level, the game slows down for them. And when I started
Mm.
studying combat and just sparring and learning how to fight, I learned the same thing, that the first time you're in the ring, everything is fast. Everything is coming at you incredibly fast. And it's all you can do just to put up your arms and protect yourself from getting too hit too hard,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
try to get back up after you fall.
Right.
But after a while, you learn how to tip your face just so that the punch that would have gotten you at a 90% hit gets you at a 10% hit.
10%.
And then you
Mm.
also learn when the gut punch comes, because it will, my friend. If you are actually vulnerable, you'll be able to prevent most of it, but
Right.
because you also have the strength and the wisdom. But there are times when the gut punch will come.
Mm.
Now you are discombobulated.
Mm.
Like I don't know if you've ever been punched in the face, but if you get punched in the face, it's very,
I
you're
did.
spinning.
Yes,
Your ability
that
to
actually
really,
happened.
oh
Yes.
my gosh. I mean, I hope it was in a ring and
I
not
was a
because
kid
somebody,
and I was playing kick with the boys and he kicked me in my face, actually
oh
broke my
my
glasses and everything. My glasses probably protect me from, yeah, it was bad. I used to fight with the
the
boys.
glasses protected
And
you.
it was pretend fight. It wasn't like we were fighting, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
loved
I
to
get it.
wrestle with the boys.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens to the best of us. Wrestle
Yes.
with the boys. And what life teaches you is every once in a while those you're going to get those kicks, you're going to get those punches.
Yes.
And if you never wrestle, you won't, right? But then you're never even in the ring, you
Then you're
guys.
just at home in bed.
You're just at home, living your safe little life, not
Yes.
taking any risks whatsoever. But if you want to wrestle, you got to face the possibility that sometimes, no matter how prepared you are, no matter how good you are, and you'll get less the wiser and older you become. But
Yeah.
sometimes that gut punch is going to hit you.
Gonna
That
hit.
punch in the face, that kick in the face,
Hmm.
that Dr. Alisa got is going to hit you in the face and it's going to hurt and you're going to be
Yes.
dizzy
Yes.
and you're somehow going to have to Muhammad Ali your way through this fight because you are going to have to, you, yes, stay calm, stay
Yes.
centered, stay
You're gonna have to
strategic.
straighten up your chest and don't be pushed through that
100%.
pain. Yes.
Evaluate your opponent. How tired are you? How tired are they? How much energy should you spend? How much energy should you get them to spend, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of that is going on in your headspace while you're recovering from that
Milliseconds.
punch.
Yeah.
And so it is, and it really, honestly, it comes with, yes, practice and experience,
Of
but it also
course.
comes with good training.
Training. Come on.
Training.
It
If you've
has
got
to
a
be.
good coach, if you've got Dr. White behind you, right? If you've got a good coach giving you these tips and these hints, you can
Yes.
become a championship fighter. And
Exactly.
and I'm not advocating anybody go out there and get themselves punched in the face. I'm obviously using that as
As
a I'm
a
using that
synonym.
as an example
Yes.
that exemplifies
What we're
life.
saying.
And
But that's
I
life
mean,
for real. Yeah.
yeah, who would rather get hit in the face versus go through COVID again? Like,
Listen, or divorce or
hands up,
something. Divorce,
hands up if you'd rather
miscarriages.
go.
We don't want that. We'll do,
No.
you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And so the reality is it's going to come. And what you
Mm-hmm.
said earlier, you made an allusion to this earlier, and it was so beautiful the way you said it. And you talked about what's beyond your control and what's not beyond your control.
Yes.
And this is actually one of the core tenets of Stoicism. It's called the dichotomy of control. And
Ooh,
the
yeah,
idea
okay.
behind it is the Stoics talk about the archer, the guy with the bow and arrow. And let's say you're an archer and
Yeah.
you are headed to the Olympics
Yes.
and you have shined your bow and you have sharpened your arrows and you practiced the night before and you got the right amount of sleep and you showed up on time and you pulled the string after you hooked the arrow and you gave it a perfect release.
Yes.
Once the arrow leaves the bow,
Ooh.
it is no longer in your control where it
Ooh.
lands,
Ooh.
right? There
Wow.
might be the smallest, most imperceptible little divot on the board that makes
Mm.
it go awry. There might be a sudden gust of wind. There might be a drunk frat boy that falls in the middle of gets the arrow. It's like a
Right?
Steve Martin joke. Gets the arrow hit in the head. But the reality is all sorts of things are beyond your
Your
control.
control,
And
yes.
once you have released, that's not to say everything is beyond your control, but it's
Exactly.
also important to recognize not all of it is.
It is. Come on.
Yes, but the better prepared we are, the more we prepare ourselves adequately for that release, the more
Yes.
likely we are for the arrow to hit the bullseye. But whether it actually hits the bullseye
Ooh.
is not in our control.
Ooh.
It just isn't. It's
Oh,
the preparation, which is the you part of it, right? Your
yeah.
emotions, your feelings, your conduct, your responses, not other people's replies.
Mm.
That is what is in your control. And you can't always control what comes out the other person's mouth.
Whew. Oh my goodness. That is so much the end. You all can go somewhere now. You got enough to listen to all year. That is the dichotomy of control. And I can't help but picturing that arrow going. And as the end, I don't think I've actually done it. I tried to. 'Cause I think that was like a rock thing. I've never done, I want to. Now you're going to make me go out there and get a coach
Well,
to
have
do
you
that.
ever have you ever thrown darts? Have you ever thrown darts in a bar?
Yeah, and I sucked. Not at a bar, but I suck at it. But I always talk about you can't hit a target that you can't see. But
Yeah,
that's the other thing. Once you release that, the big thing is what I'm seeing is someone who's worked hard, who's done everything. Because I've been there. I've been that person who's prepared and done everything I was
yeah,
supposed to. And I show up and I did not get the outcome that I wanted or desired. And that's the thing about it. It's like you don't come back and never do it again. You just
right.
keep doing it because you get one thing you're not doing is losing the skill. Because as a skilled trained person who's doing the arrow, you already assess the environment, the wind, and all this stuff because you're trained. Otherwise, you're just going out there and shooting. You're just pulling an
100%.
arrow. But your chance is, like you said, it's that either 90 or 10% that it will land.
Yeah,
However, whether it's 10% control or 5% or 1.1% control that you have, it's still not all on you. Oh my gosh, that's so brilliant. I want to dig a little bit deeper because you talk about resilient self-leadership, a term that's not just, for me, it's not catchy. It's huge. It's
Yeah.
everything. And I love that you talk about becoming the one. What are some of the tools or practices from your book that help someone develop their inner anchor
Some of the tools I like to talk about in a podcast format, because they're very easy to digest and very easy to remember and start applying immediately,
yes.
are the following two. The first one is called discomfort embracing. It's an ancient
Mhm.
Stoic technique. It's also what half of Silicon Valley does when they take ice baths in the morning, right?
Ah,
The reality is that if you put yourself in circumstances intentionally that
mm,
make you uncomfortable, and it's much easier, by the way, for people to do this with physical circumstances, right?
mm,
For an athlete to push beyond the pain or embrace the sweat, right?
yes.
What's more difficult is emotional circumstances.
Come
Are you a
on.
conflict avoider? Do you feel bad when you're in situations that could potentially give rise to guilty feelings? Do you have a hard
Mm,
time with vulnerability? Do you have a hard time with maintaining self control in a particular situation? Keep putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations intentionally.
yes.
Expose, 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 and
Ooh,
practice embracing that discomfort so that when the discomfort comes unpredictably, you are so accustomed to this feeling that it doesn't phase you in the same way. And it doesn't mean that you're some sort of robot monster who doesn't get phased by terrible things. It
right.
just means you don't lose your wit in the moment where, in the case of my parents, in the moment where the missiles were raining down on us at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they had to
Mhm.
decide based on the pitch of the alarm, the red alarm that was going off in the city, whether they had enough time to get to the basement or whether they just had to get into a door frame and put their bodies around me, right? I mean, you either figure out how to do that or your kid gets cut up by the aftershock even if they don't get hit by the rocket, right? And
Ooh,
so this is the reality. It
this
doesn't
is the
make the
reality.
impact of the missile strike different, but what it does is it allows you to behave with control and decisiveness. The greater you have exposure, exposure, exposure. If you're afraid of public speaking, number one fear in the world, more people are afraid of it than death.
Dying. Yes.
Yes, you're afraid of public speaking?
Get out there and
Start
speak.
public speaking.
Just go.
Start public speaking. Join the
Yes.
Rotary Club. Go
Yes.
talk in front of your kid's classroom. I don't care what it is,
Right.
right? Sit in front of your family members. Get your best friends. It feels really silly and ridiculous, but get your best friends to sit there and practice,
Yes.
practice, practice, practice. And when you practice, what you'll learn is it's only about 7% what you're saying.
Yes.
The rest of it is body language
Come on. Energy
and
and
tone.
frequency. Yes.
Yes, tone. So, how do you modulate your tone? How do you sound strong when you want to
Yeah.
without sounding intimidating? How do you sound welcoming when you want to? And decrease the strength level a little bit. How do you talk faster when it's a 14-year-old you're talking to, or slower when it's a 70-year-old board of director you're talking to?
Right.
How do you change your volume, your pitch, your ability to address certain inflections within a particular
Hmm.
sentence? How do you manage that so that you are communicating with tone and body language far more? They have it, the communication psychologists call it the 738-55 rule, which is not a real rule. It's kind of a silly thing to say because it really depends on the person and the circumstances.
Yeah.
But on average, right, on average, when you're communicating, it's about 7% words, about 38% tone, about
Hmm.
55% body language. But guess what it is if you're on the phone or on a Zoom call, right? It's almost all tone.
Yes. It's
And
all,
that's the modern world.
yes, that's where we sit. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Wow.
so mastering that and learning to embrace it. So that's your first practice, discomfort
Yes.
embracing.
Discomfort
Choose
embracing.
one thing every few months and do it every day. And just like the Silicon Valley executives and their ice baths, it can be for only 3 minutes.
Right.
it doesn't have to be an entire day event. It
Right.
doesn't have to be hours and hours long.
No.
Habituate yourself.
Yeah.
Create a sort of a
Gradual plan to
gradual,
increase the
yes,
time. Yeah.
accumulation
Yes.
of tolerance.
Yes.
So that would be the
Absolutely.
first one. The second one, and it's a funny one, and sometimes people laugh at me, but one of the greatest Stoic tools that I really love is memento mori, which
Mm.
means remember you must die, which of course is kind of morbid and a little
Oh,
sad. But what it really means is you're not dead yet. Whether you're a sinner or a saint, right? Tomorrow's another day.
tomorrow's
You're
another
not
day.
dead yet. And the
Yeah.
only moment you can truly experience is now. But guess what? You can prepare for future moments.
That's right.
You can prepare for the future, experience the today, release the yesterday, because the arrow has
Oh,
left the bow. You cannot
yes. You
control
cannot
it.
pull it back either. Right.
You cannot pull it back. You can sit in observance of it so you can learn from it, right? Especially
Right.
if you made a mistake. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay and that's welcome. But sitting in the mistake and dwelling on it and, I should have said this, I should have done that, I
Come
should have blah,
on.
blah, blah, and torturing yourself over it, that's not going to serve you, right?
Yes.
That's not going to serve you at all. You must release it. And so memento mori is this practice. And I actually have a ring that I wear every day that says memento mori on it. And it
Ah.
reminds me of this practice. Some people, they have coins they keep in their pocket.
Mm.
A memento mori coin, you can get them 50 cents on Amazon. It does not
Really?
have to be something that you invest a great deal of money on.
Wow.
When I first started practicing memento mori, I started writing my obituary once a year. Once a year, I would sit there and I would write my obituary. What do I want it to say when I die?
Die. Yes.
Right? What do I want it to say when I die? What will it actually say when I die? And, or, right? And then
Right. Totally
where's
different,
the
huh?
discrepancy? How do I hone in on that? Because I fear sometimes with me, my ambition can cloud my judgment.
Oh, I've been there.
And,
I can say, yeah, I
right?
concur
Like,
100% with that.
yes. And have you ever maybe given into the whim of the moment in a manner that doesn't actually align with your overall moral character?
Absolutely, I've done it.
I mean, who
Absolutely.
hasn't?
It's
And
stinky though.
so
I
the more we
dislike it.
slow, yeah, the more we slow it down, the
Mm,
better we are
yes.
at engaging in an authentic presence so that
Mm-hmm.
who we are in that moment is not a slave to the whim, the reflex, the habit, the emotion, right? But it is consistent with our, and it's not my job to tell you what your morals ought to be, by the way. I don't try to be a guru. I'm not anybody's priest. It's it's not my job.
I
My
love it.
job is to just help you find that consistency and to narrow that gap. That
Yes.
is my job. And so
Yes.
that is what I try to do. Help you figure out who you are. A lot of other leaders do that too. But more
Right.
importantly, help you move in concert with it, with an
Mm-hmm.
intentionality that is
Yes.
driven by Stoic empathy.
I love it. Ooh, I love it. I love it. I have to go look for those because I started reading your book. I think I got it yesterday, and I did order a hard copy as well. I got the e-copy that you all sent me. So let's talk a little about the let them theory versus strategic empathy. Everyone's been quoting Mel Robinson lately. Let them. Who, when I think about it, I was thinking about who really are they? But your framework offers something more intentional that you can break down. If you can break down when you say let go, when you, instead of letting go, you're saying lean in. There's a difference, letting go instead of lean in. Can you break that
Yeah.
down for us? That what that mindset
Yeah.
looks like in
What I want you to
practice.
do is take the space between stimuli and control. Here's the stimuli.
Mm,
Here's the response.
mm,
Take this space. live in the full recognition and understanding that you are not the only thing in this space. There are external power dynamics. There is
Ooh,
economic factors, racial factors, gender factors, power dynamics, all sorts of things coming in, pushing you, pulling you. But guess
yes.
what? You also exist in this space. You
Space. Yes.
exist.
Yes.
And you do have a say over
Yes.
what occurs between stimuli and response. That
Bonds.
doesn't mean you could have unslaved yourself or gotten yourself out of the concentration camp if you manifested it hard enough. But what it does mean is you can find the will to live, survive, and be a source of strength for others under any set of
In that same
circumstances
circumstance.
because of what's in here, right? And by the way, I got to say, I love Mel Robbins. We have the same publisher. No, nothing, no criticisms.
Not at all.
Very different ways
That
of,
has its
yeah,
place. I know, right? Exactly. We're not throwing out
yeah,
let them. We're saying and
yes.
let them and lean in.
Lean in
Yeah.
and slow the space down and exert your control over this space and find comfort in the exertion of that control because I promise you at the end of the day, almost nothing went exactly the way you wanted it to.
No.
And yet, if you are living in this space, you
Mm-hmm.
are feeling your full authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
No part of you is an imposter. To the extent that you are resilient, it isn't because you're faking stoicism. To
Mm.
the extent you are doing what needs to be done for your organization to save as many lives as possible, it's not because you're pretending to care about people. The
Yes.
reality is that you feel both the empathy, the vulnerability, and the resilience, and you're using that combination to formulate opinions and create actions that, in your judgment, are aligned with integrity and wisdom and strategically appropriate. In your judgment, not in mine, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Ooh, I'm gonna share. Can I be vulnerable? This
Yeah.
is what I've been needing exactly at this time. It's my work. What I am working on for my own growth is that balance and that dance. I have asked my partners several times, how do you maintain these boundaries? Be empathetic, but don't. I'm like, but then you seem to be mean sometimes. And I
Yeah.
was questioning that, and I'm like, I know there's a certain way of who I must become. Keywords is what you said. That's why I was just going crazy when you said it's not a way of doing something or being. That's where the imposter syndrome has more room to creep in. It's becoming the person that is empathetic, but has that control,
Yeah.
understanding, like you said, knowing that the stimuli and the response. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I'm thankful for you and how it all evolved for me because this book, and I did get into some stuff. I had to do my quick browsing and looking at chapters. And so one of the most relatable chapters in the book that I picked up and I kind of dug into a little bit overnight was about conflict navigation,
Yeah.
right? You wrote, you can disagree without becoming disconnected. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's it. Those are the words to exactly how I want and I try my best to navigate conflict. She has coined
Yeah.
it exactly.
Yeah.
That's the word. What advice do you have for those trying to maintain, like me, for me, maintain relationships and integrity during tough conversations?
Tough conversations are hard. I would say
Yeah.
always, always, always. And
Yes.
thank you, Dr. White, Alisa, for showing us your vulnerabilities. It is so appreciated because, people look at people like you who are so accomplished and so composed and so articulate and just have their stuff together. It just really helps to know, you guys, we all struggle with this.
We
This is an
do.
ongoing practice.
Yes, it
And
is.
I will tell you right now, and I'll bet you anything in that short time that I've spent with her, that Elisa would agree with this, that I hope I'm not the person I am today 5 years from now, because that would mean I didn't grow at all,
Come
right?
on. There needs to
That
be a
would
new
mean,
version with the dreams and plans that we have, the obituary
right?
that you wrote.
Right.
It requires another version of you. There's no way.
It requires,
Yes.
that's right, an adaptation.
Yeah.
And so the expectation and the humility of proceeding with full confidence, right, but without hubris, that you have reached the epitome of you-ness? No, you haven't. Let's
Did you
hope you
just
haven't.
say Eunice?
I did.
That is one of
I have
my
young
words. I
kids,
can
and
use
Dr.
it
Seuss is
forever.
always going through my mind.
I said, you being you as the youer, the most youest thing you can do, because when you're in your Eunice, I wrote something about that years ago. And
Oh, did you really?
Yes. So I was just glad I found someone who's just making up words like mine. Nothing is new under the sun, but Eunice, come on, sister, talk to us.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So that's the first thing I would say is embrace the likelihood that you will not be in this conversation exactly the way, at least not that you won't be in every conversation,
Right.
every difficult conversation, exactly the way you want to be, right?
Right.
You can get
Ooh.
better, and sometimes, man, it's spot on, and you feel so good about yourself, and you're like, wow, I really
nailed that.
held my ground, right?
Yeah.
I was a freaking hero with that one.
Yes.
And then other times you fall flat on your face and scratch it up so everybody can see the scratches everywhere you go. And
Yes.
that's so
Yes.
much worse.
Yes.
And so I would say come back to that, come back to dichotomy of control. You can control what you say, how you say it, the intentions with which you say it, the level of judgment you carry, your body language, your tone. You cannot control what they say back. You can try to predict it and influence it. And there are things that you can do to expand your sphere of influence there.
Yes.
And that's a lot of that is in the first half of the book.
Yes.
But in the second half of the book is a lot of the stoicism, which is at the end of the day, you cannot control it. The only thing you can control is once they've said what they're going to say, now how are you going to respond? Now what's next, right? Now that your dart went awry, despite everything that you did properly, what are you going to do with your next dart? How are you going to manage the win or the loss? How are you going to respond to the gut punch? That defines your character and your integrity. And you should fully expect being put in that position, not in every conversation.
Right.
But reasonably frequently, because listen, people, even if you master yourself, right? Even if you master yourself, which who's mastered themselves? I mean, I know a couple of Buddhist monks that have gotten close, but other than that, right? I mean, even if you master yourself, they haven't yet.
Right. You might be way ahead of them on that journey.
You might be way ahead of them, or there might be something going on with them you're not aware of.
Right.
They might be battling an external force that is pulling and pushing so hard at their gut, and you don't even know about it. That is quite a possibility.
Yes.
But the reality is, it doesn't matter. You don't have to give them what they want because of that. But at the same time, you can't entirely control what they do. You can only control how you proceed. And if you move forward with fairness, with integrity, with impartiality, with wisdom, with appropriate judgment, and make this best decision possible, regardless of the facts that you have at your disposal.
Yes. Ooh.
You will feel true to yourself. The rest is on them.
Right.
It's just on them. And that's one of the things to really keep in mind with difficult conversations is that dichotomy of control. And the way the book, by the way, is broken down is the first half of the book is stoicism, is empathy. Empathy. How do I influence through empathy? How do I strategically evaluate my need for emotional attachment in a particular situation?
Yes.
The second half of the book is stoicism. Okay, but how do I modulate my emotional?
Yes. Yes. So important.
Yes. And in the middle of the book, and y'all can skip it if you want, I put a chunk of it in the middle, so you can skip it if you want. It's chapter 6 is all the neuroscience. I tried really hard not to even cite to a psych journal. Either there was an fMRI study involved, or I think I did it a couple times to really well-known psychological theories, but otherwise I left it at the neuroscience because it helped me to know what happens to my amygdala when I take a moment and take a breath after I'm told something disrespectful or something in anger. But what
Right.
happens to the emotion center of my brain? What
Mm,
happens to my cognitive adaptation capabilities when I am angry or
yeah.
insulted? What happens to
Insulted.
that person's brain? I want to know what's happening in their brain. And then
Right.
I
Me
want to
too.
know, yeah, and
That's what I get so much in psychology and science because
I
I want
know.
to know I want to see it because I create the images now. I have the images in my head and I
Yes.
can see it happening. So it's easier for me to regulate, I guess, or adjust.
100%. I found it easier, so I put it in the book. But a lot of readers want to skim through that material. It's a little dense. Feel free to skim through it. And by the way, the glossary at the end has all the citations. Feel free to
Ex-
look up the sites. You don't have to.
Exactly.
It's
So
really
well
whatever
done.
you want to invest in that, but it's there if you want it.
Yes.
And it too is told through story form, right? And
Yes.
and and it really helps you see and understand, how do I diffuse myself? Also, how do I diffuse the other person, right? And at the end of the day, I have a
Right.
lot more control over me than I do over them, but I do have
Exactly. I'm
influence over
just
them. So,
influenced.
yes.
Yes.
And control of me over me will help me influence them.
Influence, which is I guess I have been honest with some of my students and my lectures, let's say, which for some it might appear to be manipulation because the lack of a better word and the science behind it. But that's you reflect what you want so that others can see and experience it. Because sometimes we're only going from the senses that I can see you, I can hear you, yes, that's how it starts. But then there's an overall impression that comes
Yeah.
over from your presence. And that's where the influence comes because you've used your words, your body language. What else?
Yeah.
But I think the
Your strategic
energetics.
pauses, your
Yes.
tone. Yeah.
Yes. And that you learn. You only learn by practice. That's why your biggest tip at the beginning, at the middle of this, was you got to go out there and just do it. You just have to do it. You're not going to figure this out if you don't practice it. I could sit here and tell you all the right things and ways to be, but if you don't go out there and put yourself in those uncomfortable situation of quote unquote trying and really sucking at it and having a little bit of win, but mostly failures, and then it just increases over time, you're not going to get it. You're not going to
I
get it.
agree.
None of this will matter because, again, you're not practicing a thing and a theory. You're becoming the person who balances stoicism and empathy according to the
100%.
so
And
that's what makes you a
and you
great
don't, by the
person.
way, you don't have to jump in head
Mm-hmm.
first into the deep end of the pool either. You can practice in low stakes situation. Just
Right.
like you can practice negotiation with your barista. Try to get that extra free shot of vanilla if you can, I mean,
Right.
if it's okay if you don't get it, nothing's going to happen to
But
you,
you get
right?
to see how people respond and
See
what
how they do it.
language and inflection and body moves you have and
Yeah.
how they responded to this part, not that part. It's just fun to see it. And then you realize, oh my God, I do have a superpower. She almost caved, but her manager wouldn't let her. Oh my gosh, I'm a rock star. Now
You've
you
done
went
this
out.
before.
Yeah, can you tell? Can you tell? I do this all
Dr. White and her free vanilla shots, y'all.
It's funny, coming from a Caribbean culture. I don't know if you've ever been on a cruise, but anybody who's listening, when you go on a cruise, I tell people never pay whatever when you get offshore. If you're in the Caribbean, never pay them what they ask because they're usually
Right.
like 10 times higher when they think you're absolutely don't know. So always negotiate those sales. And so that's normal. It's like, okay, so I'll give you five. I got five, that's
Yeah.
all I'm willing to spend. You could be that. But at the end of the day, you'll be like, well, I really love it, blah, 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 get connected with it. And then you could be like, but I'm only going to be able to spend $10. And they might say, well, it's 20. All right, let's see. I got $2 here, 12. All right, it's a deal. I've done it. And I tried and we're like, oh, I got a little bit of negotiation going on. I tried it when
Yeah.
I cruised to the Bahamas. But if I didn't try it, I didn't know I could go negotiate my car when I'm buying my
Right.
car, or
Exactly.
getting items for a humanitarian project and getting them to donate a few
100%.
$1,000s of product for
Or
free.
if you're my sister, she's with the UN, with a foreign government, with a foreign military. I mean, it's the same thing.
It's the same
It's
thing
no
as the
different.
barista, just now doing it with a different.
100% it
Come
is.
on, come
100.
on.
I mean, the stakes are different,
The
but the
stakes are different.
skill set is the same.
Same. And you've been practicing with your
Yeah.
barista, or maybe the taco shop man on the street selling tacos,
Oh
whatever
my gosh,
you
I love
flavor.
it.
My
Get that free hot
that's
dog, man.
people look at my resume and some of the work I've done. Are like, oh my God, you were a royal prime minister. You blah blah blah. I'm like, it was no different than when I started working with preschoolers. I promise you, the art of negotiation is almost the same with all these men, and I'm being the only woman. It was like literally putting out preschool arguments at the beginning and then finally. And I'm like, so I am the same person that's
Yeah.
evolving. I just have more risk involved in what I'm negotiating, who I'm leading, what I'm facilitating, because I call myself a facilitator. So that is so, so powerful. You guys, listen, I don't ever want this interview to end, but let's shift into something a little bit more personal with Shermin. And so on the show, we always love to ask our guests about moments where they flipped the script, when you had that radical shift of your mindset to get into the next version of you. So, Shermin, can you share with us a moment when you went on your while you were on your journey that you had to shift your mindset? What did you learn, and what did it teach you about self leadership? I know you've
A
shared
moment where
a couple with us already.
I
Where
had
you
to
had to
shift my mindset. I
yes,
will I will say a moment where I changed, but there's so many,
yeah, I know, right?
but one of the ones that immediately comes to mind is I was with my firm,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a young man, same age as me,
Mm-hmm.
and he was coming up at the same time as I was. He had a very different experience than I did. His father was really good friends with one of the senior partners at the firm,
Mm-hmm.
and they had went to the same country club. And I spent my fourth and fifth grade year in a bomb shelter. I mean, it's very, very, very different backgrounds.
Yes.
I didn't have those points of connectivity. I developed an image of this individual as someone who was profiting from his privilege.
Mm.
And while some of that
Worse.
was true,
Yeah.
the reality is this guy's dad had actually died
Mm.
tragically.
Come on.
And the pressures and the stressors that were in his life that were not available to me,
Mm-hmm.
and of what I had going for me in terms of the constant support in
Of
my
your
life,
both parents, yeah.
I had privilege in different ways. And some of the privilege I had, by the way, I had given myself through hard work, but
Or
it was mine
it
anyway.
was yours and you had it, right?
And I had it. And he didn't. And when
Right.
I saw that, it wasn't like a moment, it actually wasn't a moment of empathy. It was a moment of understanding that whatever his circumstances are and whatever my circumstances are don't matter when it
Mhm.
comes to who deserves leadership in such and such case more.
Come
They
on.
don't. What matters is the alliances and the relationships we're forming and the
Yes.
capabilities that we have to deliver once we have formed them. And those two things, right? And so come back to that. Stop worrying about this power. It exists,
It
and
exists.
you'd be silly not to be aware of it, right? You'd
Right.
be an unwise fool to
Mm-hmm.
not be aware of
Mm-hmm.
what it is that are the advantages and disadvantages of your competition.
Yes.
But formulating hostile judgments in a
Without
manner that
information.
allowed me to excuse my own failures. And
Mm.
again, that's not to say that there weren't power dynamics affecting me. There were. It
There
just
were.
doesn't really serve me to linger on
You
them.
can't really move forward and win.
I can't.
That's why I say, how is this how is this thought process that I'm holding on to right now serving
Correct.
me in terms of where I'm headed and where I want to land?
Correct. It's like Sisyphus rolling the rock up the mountain only to have it roll back down again. Look, I mean,
Love
if
that
your
imagery.
strategy isn't working for you, man, maybe it's your strategy that could stand some tweaking.
Come on now. That's
I
the
mean,
shift.
it doesn't mean the world's a fair place. I'm not telling you it is. I'm
No, it's
telling
not.
you
And
it's an unfair
we're not
place.
here to fight and argue that. It's such a timely example that you're sharing with us because we're living in that time where that's up for debate all
Yeah.
across the globe. And it's why, I mean, people are fighting in the streets and getting in arguments about privilege and all that. You don't know the whole story. So just chill out. It's my
You don't
vote.
know other people's stories. It's
Yes.
absolutely
And
true. You don't.
I don't know, I don't want to assume that I would be better off if I were in your shoes when I don't even know what size you wear. I can't even see your
Right.
feet.
Yes. And also, would you really want to be that person?
No, I
Like,
like
would you?
myself. I like myself and I like my journey. I like my calling. I want to be me. I want to be the best version of me. I say it's always me against me because the requirement of, like you said, what I've put on my obituary, which I haven't, but it's sort of the same. How do I want, what legacy? How do I want to be remembered?
Yeah.
That's who is calling me forward. And so it
Yeah.
requires me to be way less. I can't focus on stuff about what other people, I have to be aware because that's how would I say, the odds that I'm up against. But that's all it
Yes.
is for me to know how to maneuver, not to spend, like you said, all that time.
100%. And your obituary is not going to say, hey, one time Cher beat out Brett at who got to be the leader in the team. That's not what you wanted to say. What you wanted to say is she lived a life of intentional integrity and
Yes.
strength of courage.
Yes.
And that's what you want. And that's all you can do anyway. Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
When we think of some of the greatest leaders, there's so much that Mahatma Gandhi did. There's so much that Martin Luther King did. We never really list all the things they do when we think of them. We think of their character. We think of the character that they possess to influence change, to influence, to lead the life, literally for me, on their own terms, doing
yeah.
what they felt like they were put on this earth to do. And then we consider how that impacted the world around them and at large.
Yeah.
And so that's when you think, I love that you used those adjectives that describes character. And I tell people in my personal business, all relationship, I want to know character. And for me, character is evolving for all of us, most of us, in one way or the other, because some of
Yeah.
us choose to intentionally develop our character, and some of us is just happening as we go. And it could
Yeah.
be for our benefit or not. It's not a good, bad thing anymore in my thoughts and how I evaluate it. It's beneficial. Is it beneficial? Is it serving me? Is it serving what the purpose that I have at this time? So the next question I have for you is, what is success for you now, and how has that definition evolved through everything you've lived through, Shermin?
Can you ask that question one more time? I couldn't quite hear it.
What is success for you now, and how has it
Oh,
that definition evolved through everything you've lived through?
success is, I mean, most definitely, and it's really important to define this, is not the achievement itself.
Right.
We've all experienced that moment enough to know it satisfies nothing.
Come
It's
on.
sure, it's a great moment to
Fleeting.
live. And it's almost surreal. And you get to live in that moment. If you're fully aware and
Yeah.
in it, you get to have a really remarkable day or two
Yes.
or
Yes.
week. But
Yes.
really, at the end of the day, you're going to come back to yourself and you're going to say, well, what's next? What have I done for me lately?
Mm.
And that is a measure that is ambitious and dangerous. The
Yes.
reality is, we need to measure our success in a way where we embrace it and feel it on
Mm.
almost a daily basis
Yes.
as we continue to grow. So for
Mm.
me, that has been, and it's a little funny for me to say this because I'm on book tour right now. So I'm literally promoting the book, which,
Yes.
by the way, is something I really struggle with. And we'll talk about this another time. But it's
Yes.
something I really like, the social media posts and things
Oh
like
my
that. Something
gosh. Tell me
I
about
really struggle with. Because for me, I have defined success as the everyday willingness to
Mm.
get back to work. The everyday willingness, and the way I view work is to create and to
Mm.
give life, to give birth to something that didn't exist before, an idea or a sentence, right? Or a moment. And
Yeah.
that is how I define success. Every day that I get to do the work is a successful day. Now
Mm,
there are moments and times that really stand out and that really assist you in your transition from one phase to another phase, and those are
yes.
meaningful and they can be marked, and you can have a party and have candles and cake and whatever. It's all great. I have
Yes.
no negative judgments about that. I do
Right.
it myself, right? Forget about it. Birthdays are like the best time of the year. I'm like, dude, I'm getting older every minute. Can I just get some
Exactly.
presents once a week for this? That's what,
Come on.
like,
Can
give me
we just
some
have New Year's
presents,
Day
everyone.
every day? It's a new day
Yeah,
for me. I got a lot to do.
exactly. But at the end of the day, unless I'm embracing the momentary process of aging, I'm not living a full life.
Come
So
on.
that is the reality. And I find this to be particularly challenging on days when I don't want to do what I have to do. Like for me,
Yeah.
that's the marketing and promo aspects.
Yes.
On days when I don't want to do what I have to do, what's on my to-do list, what's on my task list is not my calling,
It's
right? But
not. It has to be done.
no one's calling is to post on social media. It's just no one's.
Exactly. I wonder about those people who had ads saying that they'll do it for me. I'm
Oh
like,
my
thank you, and
gosh.
you
Oh
don't
my
do such a
gosh.
great job.
So
I have to
then,
redo it.
but then it is something I do in service to,
Yes.
right? It is
Part of the
something I do in
package.
service to. Why? Because it was important to me for my material to be absorbed and digested
Yes.
by large groups of people. So, because that's the impact I wanted to have.
Yes.
So for me to do that, I have to put myself out there at, and constantly be that and have that
Be
and
that
try to
thing.
focus on that instead of sales,
Yes.
right? If I'm focused on that instead of sales, if I'm focused on, I wonder if this video can help people. I wonder how I should frame it. I wonder how it can get to the people who need it the most. Maybe I
Yes.
should put it this way. Okay. Maybe I
Yes.
should put it that way. And trying to come back to that. Still don't love it, but at least it serves my overall
All goal.
goal
Yes.
of
Yes.
what I want to do, which is I want to create. And right now I'm dying to get back to writing. And
Uh-huh.
it's all I want to do every day is write. And I haven't gotten to write at all for the last 2 weeks, except,
Yes. A little bit
hashtag
here and
this
there.
and
Yeah.
whatever. Right.
Whatever social media makes you have to do to get this message out. Yeah, I love it. I was going to ask you, what's your next big mountain and what mindset you need to lean in on to climb it? But you kind of already answered. It's probably
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I
social
mean,
media
don't get
thing.
me wrong, you guys. I have the next 5 books planned. I'm going to do
Oh,
at least two more nonfiction, and then I want to go back to some fiction.
yes.
So it's not that I don't have future plans. It's just
Yes.
that I try. I try very hard to not hang my hat of success on the accomplishment of those. Every
Mm,
day that I get to
yes.
create, write, share myself with the world in a manner that serves it. Like my mom, she's an incredible chef. Like, I mean, I know everybody thinks their mom is like the best cook in the world,
Yeah,
but my mom is actually the best cook in the world. And
I
so,
love it.
but I'll
I
tell
want to
you,
come over. Oh, I
oh
want
my
some
gosh,
other
come
food.
over. Persian food, man. There's nothing like it.
Because I know
But
you said you were spending some time with them, so you're probably
oh
getting all
my
the good
gosh,
stuff.
I walked in through the door saying, I need to be 5 pounds heavier. And she said, we'll take care of that.
I got you. Don't worry, I got this. Good home cooked meals that are traditional and all the good things.
But you know what it is? She makes this meal, and a lot of us have had either we are this person or we have this person in our life where they make this meal and they put it down in front of you, and watching you eat that meal and enjoy it is
Yes.
like the best thing that's happened to them.
I know I do that. I am not a chef or the best cook. I tell people I prepare food so people can live. And it never sucks. Everyone thinks it's so great, but I'm like, I just want you to be fed. And I
Yeah,
love to sit there and watch you enjoy it. And if you don't, I probably try to recook you something. That's me, the old me. I don't have time for that anymore. If you don't enjoy it, you can go to the store or whatever or find something
right.
else. But it's a way of nurture and how we
Yeah.
love. So your mom's that way. I get it.
Oh
Tell her I
yeah.
get her.
My mom is the ultimate model of who I want to be. And,
Oh,
and it's, of course, my mom wakes up in the morning and all she thinks about is how she can serve others. Now, it's very interesting because my dad wakes up in the morning and all he can think about is how he can improve that day. And those are very, very
Wow.
different mindsets. Yeah. And I
Yes,
grew
but
up
they
with both
sleep
of
in the
them.
same bed and they work together forever, at least since you were a kiddo, which is
Yeah.
almost as
They've been
half a
figuring
century ago
it
as you
out
said.
since I was a kiddo.
Yeah.
And yep, I don't know about the same bed. They're in their 80s, but like,
But that's such a big, that's a testament to some of, they have a totally different sort of mission, but it still meets the same goal, I guess I would say, or same,
it's mutually
different goals, but very
compatible.
different, same mission. Yeah.
Yeah, it's compatible. And as their child, I get to live with both examples.
Right.
So, yes, and so it's kind of an extraordinary constant exposure to growth, 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 service, service,
My
service, growth,
service.
growth, growth, right?
Yes.
And then also like watching my mom struggle with setting boundaries and watching my dad struggle with things that make him anxious or uncomfortable. And
Hmm.
it really is a privilege. I think when you find people who are in your life, I hope you have those people, you guys. And if you don't, go out there and find them.
Find them.
People that are a good 20, 30 years older than you,
Yes.
who really are people to aspire to, not because of what they wrote or how
And what
much
they
money they made,
accomplished, who they
because of how they
are,
live.
and how
Yeah,
they live.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Ooh, wow. Love it. You guys know we're almost here at the end with Mindset Bites to go, Shermin. This is where I give you a moment to pour out to the audience as if it was your last word to the world. Weird enough. I know you probably already have it planned. 90 seconds to leave words of wisdom or practice that could shift someone's, if you haven't given us a million today, their inner thoughts, their inner world. I'm going to step away from the microphone and the camera, and it's all you, Shermin. Here we go.
Oh, well, that's very, very generous and very kind. This is a very unusual thing. I'm not accustomed to this happening in podcasts. Here's what I would say to you guys. I don't have it all figured out. I'm on the journey. I hope that you will join me on this journey. And at the end of the day, the journey is to help you find your own moral values, your own code of integrity. Honor it like it's the most precious thing you have, and then learn to live, act, think, judge in a manner that is consistent with it as much as possible. Release the mistakes because they were of yesterday. Embrace the preparation for tomorrow and never, ever forget the only moment you truly experience is this one. You aren't dead yet. You are still alive and everything is still possible.
Oh my gosh. Now does it make sense why we do that?
Love that so
Because
much.
it's I feel like I'm collecting some of the most powerful things that would ever be said on this planet. Every time I hear them, I literally get goosebumps and different emotions and feelings. And then I want the editors to just edit that. Just these words, these 90 seconds of all the different people that come on here. It's its own podcast.
Oh my gosh, yes. That would be the ultimate documentary film.
That's what I feel like I'm doing. And I was like, what if we had just 90 seconds to speak to the world? What would it be? Because and that's where it all
Yeah,
started. So I love it. I love it. Thank you for
I
being
love it
so
so
thoughtful
much.
with
Thank
that. So,
you.
Shemaine, here's the thing. I know I always love for those who are listening, because some people are like, they're in the car and they're going to be like thinking about this episode, right? And I want them to just grab their cell phone and go straight to where they can find you and connect. So we do it audibly, even though it's in the description and all the things. So if you can tell us how to connect with you and get this masterful book, what's your favorite way for us to connect with you and get this book? I would love for our audience to hear it coming from you.
All right, awesome. I welcome it and I love it. The book is Stoic Empathy. It's available everywhere where books are available. So if your life demands that you push a button and have Jeff Bezos deliver it to your house, that's okay. You can do that, no judgment. But if you've got a favorite bookstore that you like to go to support your local bookstore, your local library, feel free to get it from them as well, or request it from your library. It should be available everywhere. It's also on Kindle. There is 10 extra tracks on the audiobook version that are meditations. So hopefully you'll enjoy those as well. I am SherminKruse.com. Nobody can pronounce or say my name, so I decided to make it my branding website because that was the smart thing to do.
Right.
But it will be in the notes. But you could also just go to stoicempathy.com or just Google Stoic Empathy, and I promise you I'll come up. It is a little difficult to converse with me in person. However, you can find me. You can sign up for my newsletter on my website, and you can find me on LinkedIn, which I respond to every non-ad message. It might take me a few weeks.
Yes.
But if you're not trying to get me to be a part of your mastermind or sell me an accounting service that I don't need, I promise I will get back to you
eventually once I uncover the message. I get it. Absolutely. That is what I say. I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel horrible because it's sometimes weeks when I'm not getting my send me an email. It works better.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so that was everything, Shermin. Truly, you brought so much clarity and strategy and soul, and I am absolutely grateful. Thank you so much for giving us your time today on Mindset Mastery Moments. I know this will go a long way. I can't wait to get into the audiobook. I didn't check for the audiobook. I just started reading the Kindle. I'm going to finish the audiobook in the last 48 hours if I did, but I'm definite. It's going to be a tool for me, and I'll be following along to see where you go and what you do and how I can stay connected personally, because I feel like you've just helped me with a little bit more clarity on an area of growth for my own self. So as always, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, the pleasure was entirely mine. I feel as though I grew as a result of this conversation as well. Thank you so much for your insights and your wisdom. I really appreciate it.
Grateful. Thank you. So disruptors, if you've ever struggled with setting boundaries, showing up as your authentic self, or feeling torn between leading with your heart or your head, this episode is absolutely, or just pass it on to another leader. We love to hear your comments and reviews. Shoot her a message, let her know that you heard us here. And as always, remember, keep mastering your mindset. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present, intentional, and being courageous in your true self. I'm Dr. Alisa with my beautiful, radiant guest today, Shermin Kruse, saying we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.